This is my Topo Toppers Mesa camper on my Nissan Frontier. It's a wedge-style pop-up camper that was installed in March 2023. I'm gradually building out the interior and sharing my progress as I go. In this third installment, I'm adding a basic floor and building a couch for a place to sit or take a quick nap without popping the camper, plus, of course, storage. I should emphasize that this is not a how-to video. I'm improvising as I go, almost entirely with materials I happen to have in the garage, and in this video series I'm just talking you through what I did and why. There are certainly better materials and techniques. I need this cabinet here to have some sort of base because there's all of these weird contours and curves, and I need a flat surface. I need the couch sort of thing to come out to this point, and I need to be able to build up from the bottom with some dividers for what's going to go into that interior space. And ultimately, I think that's just going to be much easier if I've got a wood base and I can anchor it to this. Whatever I build over here, I'm thinking will anchor to this. So what I'd like is the floor material to come over to here, because this cabinet I think is going to come pretty much either to here or to here. So that's a big piece of plywood that I would need to cover that at the bottom. As it happens, that slide out that I built for the bed of the truck when I didn't have anything on the back, this piece of plywood right here is exactly the right width to go across there, and I know it's the right length because I made it to fit right inside the bed of the truck. I did try to sell this on Craigslist. I didn't get any bites at all, and so I'm just going to repurpose this material rather than going and buying something else. I'm just going to take it all apart, and I bet I will find use for this wood, and I may find use for some of the hardware. It was useful while I had it, and now it's going to serve another purpose. This previously ran between the two wheel wells, but since I want to flush it all the way to one side, I need to cut a notch for the passenger side wheel well. Perfect. My very first sort of temporary build that I did in the back of the truck when I had the diagonal bed, I put in a floor which I anchored to the Utilitrack down in the base here, and it was kind of a headache because it was really hard to make sure I had the unistrut nuts in the right position to line up with the holes that I had drilled in the floor piece that I had here. So this time what I've done is I've actually cut little windows using a hole saw, so that I can see right where the Utilitrack is and make sure I'm drilling right in the center of that. And then I can also, that way I can manipulate that nut into place. Now the couch thing that I'm going to build here is going to come out to about here or so, I think. So none of this is going to be seen. It'll be inside whatever storage is here. The couch thing will also be anchored to these bolts along the side of the bed and to the Utilitrack on the front of the bed. So there will be additional sort of, stuff holding things down, which will, in turn hold this down. So these three bolts holding this down is really more than enough, I'm sure. Also, this piece of wood that was the bottom of my slide out, it was previously coated with spray can bed liner, so it's got a pretty solid coating on it. Again, this part over here is going to be hidden. I will certainly re-coat this with more bed liner on the parts that are visible. In winter, I anticipate having some sort of, warmer rug or mat or rubber or something on top of it as an extra insulator in winter. And then I think in summer, just walking on the bed linered wood actually works just fine, and then it's easy to clean out. Well, I'm really happy about this for a number of reasons. A, it means that the money I spent building the slide out for the back of the truck, which was, very temporary, was not wasted because I was able to repurpose it. I didn't have to go buy a new sheet of plywood to make a floor here, and then, have to also deal with transporting it or cutting it in the parking lot. and in order to transport it in the bed of the truck. Yeah, I'm really happy. I've got this very tiny first step in here. So I really seriously considered trying to build the furnishings for inside the camper out of reasonably nice plywood that I would then finish and you would see the wood. But I've just got so much material on hand. Here I've got some nice pieces of plywood from the previous build in the canopy. I've got some other stuff here. Some of this was stuff that friends left behind. Some of this, some nice big pieces here that I got free off of Craigslist. I've got a bunch more various pieces of plywood here. A lot of this is stuff I got free, and some of this is scraps from other projects. I have more than enough material to do just about everything without going and buying anything else. And I can't bring myself to not reuse what I already have. Ultimately, I feel much better about the project reusing existing material, and it's also kind of a fun and interesting puzzle to work with what I have and figure out, you know, this could work for this, that could work for that. And even some of this material from the bed slide that I took apart, I think some of this is going to be useful for some of the hidden structure in here. And, you know, this isn't something that I'm going to be living in. It is a camper. Me, when I get out, you know, stuff gets dirty, stuff gets banged up, and I don't want to have to be worried about, you know, damaging it or getting it dirty. The height of my couch has been determined entirely by the height of my power station that will be built in. I definitely don't want it any higher than this. So this was a piece of the bed slide out thing that I had before. It was underneath this before. And this is a scrap of plywood I got for free off of Craigslist. Just some 2x2 that I had. So with this all sort of mocked up where the compressor will go, and there will be a, you know, a door covering it here. And then I've got the placement of the jackery figured out based on that. So now I'm going to figure out the opening that I want to cut in this. That hole cut for the jackery. And this is all secure and ready for the rest of this to get built out. And a top put on it, and I'll make some kind of divider over there. So I've got this just sort of pinned up for now. I need to cut a door in it, but the jigsaw blades that I have are not getting it done for turning the corners, and so I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to work on getting the top of the bench made. This is a piece of plywood that I got for free along with some other wood off of Craigslist. I picked it up months ago. Didn't have a specific plan or use for it, but it's the right amount of wood to make the top of that bench. To support the far edge of that bench top, I bolted this piece of 1/8" aluminum angle that was part of my previous build to the truck bed. In a completely unplanned and extremely lucky coincidence, it ended up being exactly the right height to line up with the front piece I had already cut to fit the jackery. I did think about making this entire lid hinged to access the space inside of there, but a couple of complications. One is that I would have had to make it sort of short in order to clear the lip of the camper, and that just wouldn't have looked as tidy there. And also it's going to be more complicated than necessary to try and hinge this off of that aluminum angle that I put in there. So ultimately what I decided is much simpler just to secure this thing down all the way around and make some access ports in it. And this all obviously looks kind of raw and funky at the moment because it's all these random pieces of wood, but I am going to paint all of this, and so it'll be uniform. Hey, Charlie. And I think that's going to pull it all together really nicely. What do you think, Charlie? This work? So this is foam that I salvaged from the previous build, and I was able to cut a piece out of that. I kind of got into express mode on this project trying to get this piece finished before Expo PNW, and apparently forgot to film any of the process of making the access hatches. But basically, I carefully cut openings in the panels so I could use the cutout piece as the hatch. I used random scraps of narrow wood to create backstops for the hatches. Everything is assembled with various length drywall screws and absolutely no wood glue. It's not elegant construction, but it's easy to put together and also easy to disassemble if I make a mistake and need to change something. I was then ready for paint. I started with a coat of Zinsser Bullseye 123 primer over everything. And then I applied 2 coats of good quality paint in a color selected to coordinate with the wall covering material you'll be seeing in an upcoming installment. I normally would have called it good at that point, but I had a bunch of this 1/2-inch aluminum angle collecting dust in the garage. I drilled screw holes, then used the tip of a larger bit to carve out a concave opening in order to countersink flat top screws. These trim pieces cover the exposed edges of the plywood perfectly and give the whole thing a more polished appearance. In the end hatch, I will be mounting and hardwiring my compressor so I don't have to raise the hood and clamp it to my battery. And yes, I've checked, the hose reaches all 4 tires from here. I went with basic surface-mounted hinges as they're cheap and simple to install. This compartment underneath the cushion will carry what-if kind of things I don't normally need to access daily. This little hatch will access the wiring hub for the camper lights and USB ports that will be powered by the Jackery. For now, I've just wrapped the foam with a blanket I had around the house, and I found a pillow and a little rug at Walmart that coordinate nicely with the blanket. The LED tape light will get replaced with permanently mounted lights, but this works great in the interim. If you have any questions about what I did here or why, post them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get them answered. In the next installment, I'll work on some of the hidden wiring before putting in the insulation and finishing out the visible walls with an experimental approach I've never seen anyone do, but that I really hope is going to work. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode, and thank you for watching.